Good evening, everybody. Can you all hear me at the back? Yes? Good. Sorry for the slight delay in the start of this. Welcome to the opening, the launch event of Everything Happens So Much. That's the Design School's public programme and part of the London Design Festival. The London Design Festival gives us a great opportunity to explore our subject area and also think about what we are as a design school. It's very important. Every year we change the theme, and this year our theme relates to the fact that we're in the current condition of intense activity and accelerated change, where everything does happen so much. The actual title of the exhibition was suggested by Dr. Georgina Voss, and it comes from a Twitter spam account which spits out fragments of modified text. So it's a kind of random thing, and that kind of randomness and that interaction between the human and algorithm is what interested us. So in this exhibition, we're launching our new manifesto, and we created that through a collaborative document on Google. So all of the staff input their ideas, and we distilled 8 key statements, which you'll see around the building, the one main one on the front of the building as you come in, but they're right the way through. And the idea is that it should be not fixed and static, but it's open for comment and will be constantly changing. So the visual identity of the exhibition as well also relates to the manifesto, and it takes the language of the manifesto, and then again, a bit like the kind of Twitter spam account, it spits out and generates provocative manifestations of that text. So when you see the key statements of the manifesto behind it, you'll see this rotating generative provocations. So it's all about this kind of instability and change, which we think is really important. So within the exhibition itself, we've got the launch of Super Systems Studio, our new research platform in the design school at LCC, which is fantastic on the upper street. Lots of amazing installations to have a look at there. We have Velocity, which is an edited extract from the publication, which just launched around graphic design in the lower street. There are new directions in service design in the Well Gallery. Mini comics in the corridor, and then in the atrium we've got lots of collaborative projects, ways of working, the creative education and trust, fantastic cookbook, and if I've listed out anything, I'm really sorry. Thanks to all the staff who've got involved in this. It's a truly collaborative effort, lots of hard work. And I can't mention everybody by name, just say, except for one person, Rosie, who has been our project manager, who's an alumni from Interaction Design Arts and has been terrific in terms of the support she's provided. So with all this excitement going on, we thought it was important to locate what we're doing within the context of the design industry. And so who better to do that for us than the Chief Executive of the Design Council, Sarah Weir OBE. So now I'm going to read out Sarah's biography because it's so long I couldn't possibly remember it. So here goes. So Sarah is the first female CEO of the Design Council and was previously executive producer at the Roundhouse in London, chief executive of Waddesdon Manor in Buckinghamshire. Other roles include chief exec of the Legacy List, the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park Charity, head of arts and cultural strategy for the Olympic Delivery Authority, executive director of the Arts Council England, and executive director of the Medical Theatre, and there's more. She started a career as a broker at Lloyd's, and then over a 15-year period accelerated to be managing director. She's the first woman to hold this position. She has a history of art BA from Birkbeck, was awarded her OBE for services to the arts in 2011, as the first woman awarded for public service in 2013, and is a fellow of Birkbeck College, and she also serves on the board of the Alzheimer's Society. Phew, right, so she's a pretty amazing person, and Sarah is going to do a presentation about the Design Council's history, its role and future, and then present key findings from this very important piece of research that the Design Council just produced, which you have freely available, you're very lucky, this evening on your chair. And then after that, we'll see how time goes. We were going to have a conversation, but we may just open up to questions from all of you. So without further ado, please welcome Sarah Weir.
Thank you, Nicky. I feel quite tired listening to my career myself, actually. But I'm sure that's close enough so that you can hear. That's not. You know, I might just hold it in my hand. Then I can That's better, isn't it? Ooh, that's better. There we go. Making life better by design is what I'm going to talk about. I love your manifesto, and I was going to sort of do not a top trumps, but our strategy is that. So it's a bit of high-tech, low-tech. I'll tell you about it in a moment. But I decided I've been at the Design Council about 18 months, and you can have important booklets and research like the ones you've got, but when you're talking about what you do, I'm a big believer in getting it into one sentence, mainly because I might then have a chance of remembering it, as will everybody else. And so making life better by design is what we do. But I was going to start with your manifesto, because there are two things which relate to what I'm going to talk about. Number 7, does anyone remember your manifesto, number 7? Whoa. Okay, number 7 is in embracing uncertainty through experimentation and risk-taking. And then number 8 is, we believe in the value of interrogating the past to shape our futures. So, where it all started, and this is incredibly relevant to today, this moment, because the Council for Industrial Design was set up in 1944. 1944 was a moment when the world was likely to change very considerably and no one quite knew what it was going to be. So the Second World War was still happening and the future was uncertain, and the government was feeling anxious. They didn't know what that future was going to be, and they were particularly anxious that the rest of the world might rush away and take all the big contracts for industrial design for ships and planes, and that we might be left on our own as a little island, isolated. I think there's something interesting there in view of 29th of March 2019. It's funny how these things go around, isn't it? And there was a report last week by the IPPR, which some of you might have read, which talks about the need for a sort of a shift between the social contract between government and people, which last happened in 1944. So I think that looking back to look forward was really important. I also like the fact that they're all smoking, sitting at their meeting, which is quite hilarious, and probably feeling a bit uncertain about what the future was going to be. So we fast forward through quite a lot of men, actually. So 1924, the Fine Art Commission was set up. 1944, the Council for Industrial Design. 1970, we became the Design Council and became a charity. 1999, some of you might know Richard Rogers, the Council for Architecture and Built Environment was set up. In 2011, there was what was known as the Bonfire of the Quangos, which Nicky probably remembers, when a lot of non-departmental public bodies were closed. And the Council for Architecture and Built Environment became part of the Design Council, and I started in 2017. So that's a quick flip through our history, which takes us to where we are now, this sentence, making life better by design. And that the 4 little cards that I just showed you, these are what they are. So better places means obviously homes, but it's not just homes, it's homes within thinking about where they sit within, where are the roads, where is the infrastructure around the houses, how does that relate to jobs? The second one is products, which is the one that many people think design is just that, a product, so that's fairly straightforward. The third one is processes, and I don't really need to explain to you what that means, but that is one that a lot of people find it difficult to get their head around. We did a launch of something the other day, and Deborah Meaden launched it, and she was interviewed by someone on Sky, and he said, at the Design Council, so what do they do? Is that sort of, he said something like chairs and tea towels or something, and she just threw her hands up in horror, went, no, it's not about that, and then was explaining to him what it actually meant. So if we get the first 3 P's right, we have better performance, and that's incredibly important for us personally and for the country, particularly as we enter this uncertain period. And we have been producing research like the ones that you have on your seats for some time actually, and it's one of the really important things that we do. About half our money is from the government, and that pays for this national research. And then from the insights we get from that research, we run a series of programs, and you're involved in one called Design Academy, the one to see Design for Change. So we run a series of programs which then exemplify the facts which come out in our research. And we launched the design economy in Newcastle as part of the Great Exhibition of the North about a couple of months ago. Actually, it was the day before the Chequers meeting, which was a very, very important meeting for the government, after which David Davis and Boris Johnson then left the government. So the Secretary of State, Greg Clark, was in with us and literally left Newcastle to go down to Chequers for the dinner and then the day discussing the future of Brexit. And this looked at what the value of design is to the UK. We first did this research in 2015 and it showed the value was £71 billion. And doing it again, which we try to do every 2 years now, so this is the second time, and it was a world first when we did it in 2015. It now shows that it's 85.2 billion. So that's about 3/4 of the size of the insurance and financial services sector, which is often held up as one of our, the really fantastic things about this country, both here and in terms of exports. And I don't think we hear 75% of the noise about design. In fact, I'm certain that we don't. There are also a lot of people employed, 1.9 million. And if you looked at it as a sort of sector, that would be the same as the entire hospitality sector. And I was just searching for a stat on that, because people that are in the design sector are actually more productive than those that aren't. And it rather neatly mirrors, let me just check what it is. Designers are 29% more productive than just the general person working in the economy. And hospitality is one of those areas that doesn't use design as much as they could, and they're about 27% less productive. So all of these people add up to the number of people that would be in hospitality. And there have been about 100,000 new jobs since the last time we produced this report. And there are 78,000 design-intensive firms right across the UK. So that's a lot of firms and a lot of people, and a huge number of those are tiny, little startups. And they're also right across the whole economy. So I wanted to make the point, and I'll make it again later, that 68% of people who have design skills don't work in design. They work in finance and banking and aerospace and transport and right across our economy. And the Design Council, we're the only organisation that looks right across the economy. Lots of people look at design in the creative industries, but no one does the whole sweep across, which I think is what's really important. And it's also important to export. And thinking back to that 1944 moment, we need to be exporting. We are the 6th biggest design exporter in the world. Last time we did the report, we were 5th. So we've dropped down a notch, and the US is now above us. That in itself isn't necessarily a major worry, but you've got lots of countries like Korea, like UAE, like Saudi Arabia, whose governments are putting huge investment into design right across their economy because they can see the value. They know the value, sort of like 1,000%, and we are putting 15%. So that is an amber light. And here we are, here's the 68% of people. This design, by the way, was done by a Japanese graphic designer. I was saying to Nicky, he didn't speak any English and we didn't speak Japanese, so it was done entirely without words, the brief and how he developed it. And this particular image, he was very keen that we had somebody sitting as if they're in the city. So it's to show that you have the creative thinking, the complex problem solving, all of the skills you need as a designer, and finance and banking benefit hugely from that. We also know in the research, and it's now irrefutably clear, that design, innovation, R&D are completely and utterly entwined. So if businesses use design, whether that's designing their procurement, their contracts, their products, their services, they also are more innovative and they try things out. And that's incredibly important for our productivity, because it isn't just about making things look beautiful, they also have to work. 60% of firms use design in some way. Is anybody a Monzo card user here? Oh, good. Well, as you probably, I don't know why you chose Monzo, but they looked at things like Netflix and that sort of thing when they were developing their credit card. And they had the quickest crowdfunding campaign so far in history. They raised £1 million in 96 seconds through Crowdcube, which was a record, and they've raised £100 million now. So they're exactly the sort of company. In their first 13 employees, they had head of design. So right at the beginning, for a new credit card, they had banking there. But there are a couple of issues. One is that the design economy is very male. It was in 2015 and hasn't moved a jot in the last 2 years. It's also, there is a gender pay gap right across design. And I should say that 78% male is compared to 53% male across the whole working economy. And there are some areas like product and industrial design which are 95% male. In fact, I was with the head of a big aerospace company the other day, and I was saying the 78% figure. He said, gosh, we would die to have 78, we're 88% male. So we've been doing a big campaign this year highlighting women in 2018 as the 100th anniversary of the Representation of People Act, highlighting women who maybe wouldn't come to the fore. So if you've got a free moment, have a look on our website. There's some really good videos of interesting people. Digital is much more mixed. I think it's because it's a newer industry. There isn't maybe, I don't know, cultural conditioning or whatever it might be. And that's an extremely fast-growing area. The other thing is that there is a regional disparity. So although it's fantastic, London 30%, home to 30% of design firms, you know, I'm a Londoner, I love London, but that was 25% 3 years ago, so it's becoming more concentrated. And if we want there to be an equity around the country, that's actually not a good thing that is happening. There are 342,000 people employed in London in design, and across the whole of the north, so that's north, northeast, Yorkshire, Humber, there's 296,000 across the whole of that part of the country. So that's not brilliant. And we showed this picture actually when we were in Newcastle. We highlighted particularly the north of England, and this is an accurate representation. We were in Newcastle, one of the little sprouts up at the top. Luckily there was a little tree there. We thought that would have been embarrassing to be in a place where there was nothing. But you can see big swathes of the country where design is not being used. And it is often places there aren't necessarily such high quality jobs. So you've got a mix of everything coming together and people feeling left out. And that's also extremely important. And the thing about the north of England is that Stephenson's rocket, you know, they were sort of the engine, if you like, of design and of innovation. And outside the big cities, that's not so much the case now. So I would end by saying that design made the difference in the past, design makes the difference now, and design will make the difference in the future, because design skills are still currently done better by humans than robots, and seeing all of you sitting in this room, I have no doubt that you will make sure that continues to be the case. Thank you.
I guess I would like to focus just initially on one of the problems that you highlighted, which is around diversity. And it's something that at LCC and UAL generally, and most industries, we're looking at how we can improve and reflect society in a more equal way. Particularly as far as women are concerned, as the first woman CEO of Design Council. Could you say a bit more about what strategies you think might change that? Obviously you highlighted people on your website, which is fantastic, on your website. What other things do you think you can do to really make that change happen in short term, medium and long term?
You will all have heard the term unconscious bias, I'm sure, and we all have our own unconscious bias of, our history, our upbringing, people we know, how we think about things. But I think that if you are not aware of that, you keep taking people on that look, in inverted commas, like you. So with something like product and industrial design, for example, I've talked to some female industrial designers, and it's quite overwhelming to sit in a room where you're the only woman and everyone else on your course is a man. I started my life as an insurance broker. I was one of 50 women in the Lloyd's market among 5,000 men. So we were the 1%. We were the endangered species. You were just stared at every single day and treated as if you didn't know what you were doing. Sometimes I didn't actually, but a lot of the time I did, and I made my way through from being the sort of office gopher to the managing director, so I must have known something. So I think it's seeing other people like you, using role models much more. There are some simple things. When you're having people on a panel, how many times have you been to a panel where everybody is a man? And then how many times have you been to a panel where everybody is a woman? Not that often. I went to something the other day and I was on a panel and I was a woman, and somebody said to me, gosh, it's extraordinary, all the panel are women. But I thought nobody would even comment on it if it was an all-male panel. Actually, they are beginning to now. So I think in terms of strategies, what you're doing as universities is show different people at that university, people that look like you, that come from, whether it's your ethnic diversity, your gender diversity, and when I'm talking about gender, I'm also thinking about transgender and non-binary, and regional, where you come from, which part of the country, what your heritage might be. All of those things make a massive difference, and if you don't see people that look like you don't feel so comfortable, I don't think. So I think you're showing the way. And in terms of employment, I don't really like just having same-sex teams. I always think it's good to have a mix in teams, mix of men and women. And you can't always engineer that, but I always pay a lot of attention to that, to ensure that we have difference within our teams so that we are, at least ourselves, showing that to other people.
Well, we have a female head of college sitting over there, Natalie, and actually the team, we've got 2 female deans, so I think we're, certainly staffing-wise, it's changed considerably that we've got that balance more. And it's quite interesting because our students are predominantly female, but there's still that leadership levels and other areas of industry where it doesn't seem to have quite happened in the way that we would like.
Well, just to say, actually, 63% of people on design and creative courses are women. But then when you look at the leadership roles, only 12% are women. And it's the same actually for Black, Asian, minority, ethnic. The numbers actually are not dissimilar to the national average, but when you look at those people in leadership positions, it just completely disappears.
I wanted to pick up on another area which, the Design Academy, by the way, which was referred to earlier, is something that we offer our postgraduate students, and we work with the Design Council on a project. And your project this year is around ageing well. I wonder if you could say a bit more about that, because the definition, by the way, of being old in there is 50 plus. so it's a bit scary. So that puts a lot
There's
of
me.
And me. A lot of we had that. It puts a lot of us in that category. So, but it is because of the demographic changes are seismic, and so I think it's a fascinating thing to really consider what that will do to society generally.
So we're thinking about ageing in lots of ways. So, for example, only 7% of current housing stock has the right, sometimes very simple adaptations to enable people to live in it from when your age all the way through to 100. And many babies born today will live till they're 100. So only 7% is fit for purpose. And £500 million is spent each year in the NHS for people who are in hospital because they've tripped or fallen in their house. It's one of the most common reasons for people not being able to stay on their feet and not having handles around to hold on to. Now, those adaptations could be quite simply made so that then you're thinking about age in a very different way because you just build it in when you build the new properties, and then they are fit for purpose from when you are 20. You know, and you're maybe going, maybe you're a student, and then you're a bit older, and you've got your buggy, and then maybe you have a disabled sister or nephew or niece or somebody living with you, and then when you're much older, you might need different things to ensure you can continue to live at home. So I think it's thinking about age in a much more positive way and seeing it as an asset, not a burden. So we do this big programme called Transform Ageing in the Southwest. Ageing is one of the government's what are called grand challenges, which it certainly is a grand challenge. And so we decided to build that into Design Academy. So when students are coming together on Design Academy, they work across the piece. So any of you heard of Design Academy or been a part of it? One person, haha. Well, yeah, you will maybe be able to give a better picture of it, but it's about working with people who are in a different discipline to you and doing that sort of complex problem solving, critical thinking, the things that the World Economic Forum say we really need for the fourth industrial revolution, but doing it on something real. And so ageing is real. You know, you just go out onto the street and you can see people who are over 50 and then thinking about what might make their life better. And so to ground it in reality, and then they come up with ideas, and then we'll put some of those ideas into practice.
So we'll have we'll be running the Design Academy project again, and so we'll announce that very shortly, so those of you who are interested can engage with that. Just got a couple more questions, then I'll open it up. The next question was about, we're worried now about the pipeline of students who are coming and doing design here, because of EBAC and it not being in EBAC, it's something that we're thinking about at LCC and beyond, about establishing relationships with schools and inculcating those design skills at a very, very early stage, because they're so important. So again, I wonder what your thoughts were on that design council.
Well, those of you that have got the design skills brochure, which is the one with the big yellow blob on the front and the nice ladder stitching, if you flick through it very near the back, you'll see a rather scary stat, which is two triangles, a red one and then a white one, which shows the dramatic decline in design and technology. The lady in the front with the purple has found it. Perfect, that's the one. Hold it up, that one there. Okay, so that shows students going from 466,000 in 2000 taking design and tech down to 166,000 last year. That escalated since the Secretary of State who made those changes 5 years ago, and it is a big, big problem. We're all saying it's a problem. It has been difficult to get a shift. And I am a pragmatist. I do understand that if governments make a policy, they don't like a few years later to have to say, oh, maybe we made a mistake, we'll change it. I understand that. But I think there is enough of a movement now for there to be a growing possibility that there might be a shift in that. Because it's affecting everything. So we talk to the engineering UK and various other people quite a lot, and they're saying that they're noticing now, because it's 5 years on, children have gone all the way through school from 14 onwards not learning any of this stuff. They want to be an engineer, But you can't design a bridge over a river without design and tech and engineering. You just got a pile of metal on the ground otherwise. It's not just the engineering bit. So they're now having to teach them those skills. And what we're saying to the government is, you know about the discussions of STEM and STEAM. So STEM is science, technology, engineering and maths, and then STEAM has the A for art in it. And people keep wanting to put design just into the A for art. And I'm saying no, because if you do that, where is the civil engineer who needs those design skills, who's going to design that bridge? So what you need is design threaded through STEM, because it relates to all of those topics. You need all of you, creative people, thoughtful, critical thinkers, working right across the economy. So it's a major problem, and it's becoming, I mean, it couldn't be more important now as we're about to be post-Brexit, just at the time when we need all of these people. And I met with the Hong Kong Design Council Hong Kong this morning, and I'd been at lunch with them, actually with one of your colleagues last year, and their chief executive of Hong Kong was talking about our education system and saying, I don't know if you remember this conversation, saying how much she wished that the Hong Kong education system could be more like ours, more liberal, more opened up, all creativity. There were about 25 of us there. There was silence. No one said anything. And I thought, we can't just let this go. So I said, but it's not like that anymore. We've actually changed. And with EBAC coming in, that's all shifted. And then everyone else sort of dived in. And I remember someone saying, oh, but we're really good at all this stuff. You know, it's fine because we're really good at this creative and design. And I said, well, yeah, but if we were sitting around this table in 10 years' time and we don't make this change on the education system, everyone will be going, sorry, so where are all those young people coming out of school with the creative skills? Oh, they've all disappeared. So we'll have to start all over again. I mean, it's ridiculous.
So my last question before I open it up is, what do you think from this piece of research that you've done that in the key learnings for higher education, what universities can do on the basis of this research, and what could you do differently?
I think access to design is really, really important. So access to courses, maybe different ways of teaching, maybe shorter ways of teaching things so that people have more opportunities to come in, using role models more so that people think this could be for me. You know, it's in India, for example, maths and IT is taken by young people in exactly the same numbers, men and women, because it's about the size of how you use your brain, not about your gender. In China, 33% of engineers are women, so there's something about just changing the narrative. I think also one of the things that we are pushing for is to have an R&D tax credit so that people coming out of university, so you'd have to be at university, but coming out of university you may well be starting up your own small business. Now if you could get, there could be a tax credit for that if you're doing R&D in that little business, I think that will make a big, big difference.
Thank you. So I want to open up to the floor to take any questions. Yes.
Hi there.
Hi, my name's Jenny Alboy and I'm a painter.
Yeah.
But I'm really, really interested in what you said, but really interested in you and your trajectory. And I want to know what are the top 3 things that have enabled you to get to where you are as a woman, please?
Great question.
I'm pretty determined. Okay, I'll tell you something that happened to me when I was a Lloyd's broker. So there's all these men, sea of men, and you know, you just look down upon as if you're an idiot all the time. And there's a whole system for how you do business. They used to have to queue up to see people, to see the underwriters, it was called. Anyway, I'm doing all of this, and often you'd wait for half an hour or something. It's really, really boring. And this guy, quite a small guy, and I'm quite tall, sort of barged in front of me to get to the underwriter. I just was like, as was everyone else, he turned round and looked at me and said, "It's a man's world." And I thought, just you wait. And I watched him and his career in Lloyd's. All I can say is, he didn't become the managing director. Actually, the other thing I think about, sort of making it is, I think there are three things that are quite important. The first is, and they might all sound quite easy, but actually they're quite difficult. First is to know yourself. And that might sound so blimmin' obvious, but it isn't. And I think it took me quite a long time to really know myself. And the second is to be yourself, which you can't be until you know who you are. And I certainly think my whole first career in Lloyd's, I wasn't really myself, probably because I was in quite a difficult environment. I didn't really realise until I stepped out, and actually I went to Birkbeck and did my degree in the evening because I'd left school at 16 without A-levels or a degree, and thought, actually, do you know, it might be quite good to get some education. So I did a history of art degree in the evening. And I think you can be yourself once you know yourself. And then the third one is look after yourself. And I didn't always do that when I was younger. I was very workaholic, driven. I'm going to make it, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do the other. And I think it's the knocks I've had in my life, the jobs I've gone for and haven't gotten, the things that have gone wrong, and having to pick myself up just makes you sort of calm yourself down a bit. That's how you get to know who you are. Then you can be who you are. And then if you look after yourself, I think the rest follows.
So there are a lot of industries who have recognised the value of design and bringing designers into their company, but there's also a lot that haven't. What can we do to kind of show them our value and that we're a positive aspect of their business?
Being out and about and talking to them a lot and showing them the stats, because hospitality, admin, retail and one other's gone out of my head for a sec, all use design much less than the norm. Often that's because they're low-paid jobs, and so they're much less productive than the norm. So if you actually go and show the evidence of that, and show how if you just do things slightly differently, they can be better and you can be more productive, that's a really good thing. And you know, we all know what's happening to the high street at the moment. I was actually just saying to Nicky, I'm really sad to hear today that Orla Keeley has gone bust. And it just seems so awful, particularly because there's a huge exhibition about her at the Fashion Textile Museum, isn't it? I mean, what an irony that that is happening, someone that's done fantastic designs. So I think it's about showing the evidence and showing examples of what can be better. We looked at 8 companies for the design economy, and we're going to put those case studies up so that people can actually see. So Monzo is one, actually, to go, this is how it was better. And then with others where they're not using it so much, this is why you're not doing as well as you can, or as well as you could do.
Thank you.
And can I just say I love the design of your tattoo. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
It could be like lace or like a bridge.
Yes, parabolic curves.
Parabolic, that's the word I was searching for.
Any other questions? There's one at the back first, and then the gentleman. Oh, that's fine. We at the back afterwards.
Hi, interesting talk. I liked the 4 key points. One word was performance.
Yeah.
That's often used in a very utilitarian sense. And the industries you've just mentioned are very much people-based and systems. And I often wonder that performing arts, the knowledge and skills behind that, are more needed more in design than perhaps they're given credit for, particularly as the systems are dynamic and you need the arts in a time sense, not just a painting and sculpture sense.
Yeah, you're right about performing arts. Because one of the other things I did in my life was run the Almeida Theatre at one point. And so there you have a huge range of design skills, you know, from your lighters to all the techies are completely different. Designing costumes, designing the theatre, obviously the seats, the whole experience for the customer, the person that's coming to the theatre. I think this thing about performance and utilitarianism, when I was on the Olympic Park, I again looked back at history to think about the strategy for integrating. I did the integration of arts and culture with design, construction, engineering, and I looked back to the 1815 Great Exhibition, which was actually, the values of that were art, design, utility. So aesthetic beauty, well designed, and it works. And it's sort of an older version of the 4 Ps. So maybe I don't move away from ideas I've had before. So performance is utilitarian, but it is also about beauty and skill. So for me, that's why that P comes last, because you've got to have done everything else first to get to the end. But it depends who I'm talking to. So if I'm talking to somebody for whom I know that utilitarianism is important, I would highlight that bit. If I'm talking to someone for whom that's not so important, you can shift your message slightly.
There's somebody at the back who had their hand up earlier. Oh, great, thank you.
Hello, thank you. I have a question after I read some of the report. South Korea have contributed 4% of their GDP to their R&D, which actually contributed to 700% growth in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Since you touched on R&D, who do you think should contribute to the lobbying? Institutions, other corporations, maybe the British Council? Could you maybe tell us some of your ideas about that, please?
Everybody, all of the above, I think. And I think it's important to have quite a coherent voice on this, and a consistent voice, and based on evidence, because you're precisely right about South Korea. Again, in the meeting this morning, actually, with the Hong Kong Design Council, we were talking about how do you get those messages across government that A, design is beyond product, and B, that it makes a big difference. And I was asking them which countries have design embedded in their public policy making, and South Korea is one of the examples, and that's why they're putting that investment in, because they can see, based on evidence, that it's going to make a difference. So I would say everybody, but the more consistent the messaging can be, the better it is, because again, I understand if you're a government minister or a civil servant, if you have 20 people or 100 people all coming at you with a slightly different message about what they want, I mean, that's just overwhelming, and you know, you'll probably just go bring the shutters down. Whereas consistency and clarity and calmness based on fact, I think, is the way to do it. But all of those people that you've talked about.
Any other questions? Oh, there in the back.
How would you push more women to enter the design field?
How would I push more women to enter? Is there a particular part of the field you're thinking about, or?
Well, you said that 70% is male body. How would you encourage more, adolescent girls to enter the study and to come out and to join this field that seems so male dominated at the moment?
I would keep pushing to get the change to education first, and then I would look at those industries. So across design, and you'll find it all in the research, but product and industrial design is very, very male, and I think it's because it's got quite it's been around for a long time, and people sometimes think of it as being, you know, heavy metal. Digital design is much, much more mixed. So I would show the range of different industries that you can go into. I would also show people the range of jobs that you can do. So it reminds me a bit of when we were on the Olympic Park, construction being very male. But when you were showing people and showing young women that it isn't always about, you don't have to be a big, brawny guy to be doing things, and you see the range of jobs, it changed their mind. So, you know, who would, if you were at school, would you necessarily think that a job in Monzo might be for you if you're interested in design? Maybe, but maybe not. So it's about talking about those different jobs and seeing the different industries. That's getting that into school. You know, we have no proper careers advice now that would give that sort of range of information, and I think it's that. See it. I mean, you can get it online, of course, and universities can play a role in that, showing how if you did this degree, these are the sort of jobs that you might do that you might not have thought about after you've done your degree.
Okay, there's something there. the back. Never opened your dress at this.
Sorry, hi. Hi there. I'm Sharon Bertram. I'm a teacher.
Hi.
I've been a secondary school teacher. I also come from a graphic design background where I was the only woman and black woman in the gaming industry working in design. And talking about STEAM and STEM, just your ideas on how would you, because I also worked in all-girls secondary school, to prepare those students to transition from going from, in terms of design, from secondary to further education onto employment. What would be your ideas on that?
I think maybe some of it is language. I mean, goodness, you must be incredibly determined. So you did tick, 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 only woman, only black woman in the game industry. It's like, wow, respect. I think some of it is about language. I was talking to a senior engineer, actually, female engineer, the other day, and she said she thinks sometimes the language is off-putting. People hear the word engineering or the word, actually not maybe so much technology, but perhaps a bit. And she said if it was design and engineering, she thinks it would be very, very different. So I think perhaps that's something again for universities, or for all of you, to think about what do those words mean to you, and which are the words that, you know, you suddenly would pique your interest, and which are the words where you think, oh, that's not really for me, and you'd slightly close down. And on the words that you would close down on, what word might you use instead? So I think language.
Thank you, thanks very much.
I'm going to take one last question, and over here, you've been waiting for a long time, so yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So just developing on that point, I work for an engineering company.
Oh, great.
And I think depending on who you talk to, it's an engineering company or it's a design company. I think the language, I think this is also speaking to why there's not a lot of women in engineering companies, a lot of the language towards students is very binary. You're a scientist or you're an artist.
Yeah.
And that's massively translated into what subjects you're made to choose at A-level, and also in the attitude of STEM universities. So in my university that I applied for, you're expected to come with a maths and 3 sciences. How can you work with STEM universities to make sure that design subjects are recognised and sort of threaded through those subjects? Because I'll be honest, until I came with the 3 might say I was a scientist, but talking about what you've spoken about, I now see there's a lot of design in the work that I do. So how do you get STEM universities sort of recognise the value of design from their students?
I think everybody should just talk about design threaded through STEM. And maybe actually STEM is not that helpful. I know we're all obsessed by it now and we're on it and the government's on it, so we probably can't change that. But in the longer term, maybe that's not actually helpful. But maybe there's a big campaign about design threaded through STEM. Because in all of those things, actually in tech is often thought, so this is not me saying this is talking to actually the Chief Executive of Tech UK the other day, and he was saying that he thinks the word tech sometimes is off-putting for women. So we need probably some graphic designers and some artists to do a nice visual campaign and show the difference of design threaded through STEM. So let me give you a good example. Contactless banking. I imagine most of you have used contactless banking today. Most people, yeah? Nod, nod, nod. The bank started doing contactless banking actually quite a while ago, and they got the tech bit right. What they couldn't work out was the design for the customer, how we were going to use it and how everything was going to link up together. And they waited to see if Oyster worked, you know, the one we had in London, which it did. And then they all went into it, they put more money in, and that was design and tech and a bit of engineering. And to be honest, Oyster isn't really needed anymore. But I was at a meeting the other day and with somebody, probably better remain nameless, who I mentioned contactless banking and design, and he said, but that's not a design project, that's just technology. And I said, no, it is, because you've got to design how people are going to use it. It completely is design. So it's maybe showing different examples or giving different case studies and having different visuals as to what design can mean within something that sounds very, maybe very male.
Right, we're going to close the questions now. By the way, we do want more men in design as well. So
Absolutely.
That's,
yeah, definitely.
Good, you know, good men, good diversity. So thank you very much for your questions. We're going to close now because there's an itinerary of events and performances happening around the different shows this evening. So if you look at the brochure, if you look at the list, you'll see what's on next. And it remains for me to thank you all, enjoy the exhibition, and a very big thank you to Sarah for a very inspiring talk.